Welcome everyone to another episode of Follow the Light Music Review. My name is John DeLaurentis, and this is episode 3 in Ranking the Albums series. So today we're going to be looking at metal forerunners, Barnabas, and I'm going to be counting down their 5 studio albums. But before we get into that, I would like to encourage you to please support my channel by subscribing, liking the video, and commenting. I'd love to hear your thoughts about Barnabas in general and maybe how you would rank these albums. And don't forget to ring the bell so that you can be notified when new content is added to the channel. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Barnabas before we get into the ranking. Barnabas was formed in 1977 by Monty Cooley in California, since he thought Christian music needed a hard rock and metal band. Now, at the time, he was unaware of the Resurrection band, and so he went about to put together this band together. So from an ad in Guitar Center, he found bassist Gary Mann and drummer Lance Johnson, who joined the band. And then Cooley tried to recruit, if you can believe this, Daryl Mansfield as the lead vocalist. That would have been interesting, although I don't think it quite would have worked. Daryl Mansfield, of course, having a long career in blues rock and only veering into metal once with his Revelation album. So things worked out for the best, I think, with that, because Daryl Mansfield declined. So Carolyn Joy was added as the vocalist, and Lance and Carolyn, along with guitarist David Storrs, they played live with the band, but Lance and Carolyn departed in 1978 and David in 1979. So soon after, Chris Klingensmith was added on drums and Nancy Jo Mann on vocals. So the band released a 45 RPM single that featured the 2 songs, Directory Assistance and Nicodemus was the B-side. That came out in 1979, and that was produced by David Storrs. The song Directory Assistance would appear again on the debut album Hear the Light, which was originally released in 1980 on the Canadian label Tunesmith. The B-side, Nicodemus, appeared as a bonus track on the M8 CD reissue of the album in 2000. All the songs on their debut were written by Monty Cooley, except for 2 songs written by Gary Mann. That album was reissued in 1984 on Light Records with a different cover. In 1982, the band released their second album, Find Your Heart a Home, also on Tunesmith's records. Monty Cooley had departed the band, so the songs were written by new guitarist Mick Donner and Chris Klingensmith, as well as by Gary Mann. Chris Brauminger, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, was added to the band on lead and rhythm guitar and keyboards. And this album also was reissued in 1984 by Light Records with a different cover again. Chris Brauminger left the band after the second album and was replaced by new guitarist Brian Ballou, with Gary Mann playing the keyboards as well as the bass. So this is considered the classic lineup of the band that recorded the metal masterpieces that followed. So in 1983, Approaching Light Speed, the band's third album, was released on Light Records, and they were firmly a heavy metal band at this point, moving away from that hard rock and boogie of the first 2 albums. And it firmly placed them in that heavy metal realm, and it is widely regarded as the band's apex, along with its follow-up, Feel the Fire, also on Light Records. So Nancy Jo Mann, around this time, released a semi-solo album. It was called Value of Life, and it was recorded to honor her baby daughter, Shauna Maria, actually, who had died, unfortunately. So the album features her vocals on 5 songs and other songs sung by additional artists on the album as well, that she brought in, I guess, to record songs. And it's a very mellow album musically. It does feature the first version of that song All Alone, which would appear on the band's final album, Little Foxes in a re-recorded version. In that album, Little Foxes, came out in 1986 on Light Records. And the band at that point was kind of already broken up, but they had to release one final album due to their contract. So I do have a copy of this Value of Life album here. Quite rare to get. And there's Nancy Jo Mann with her baby. And there she is here. And these are 3 other vocalists that are on the album. And like I said, she does 5 songs on here. And it's very mellow, except for the final song, All Alone. That was kind of a rocking song for that album. But it does end the album. So the music of the band would not be available on CD until later. So in 1992, when the Gospel According to Barnabas was released, that was the first time the band had music of theirs on CD. However, this is not a straight remaster from the original albums. This is from the original 24-track masters. However, it was remixed by John and Dino Elefante, referred to as the Pachyderm Company on here. And what they did is they brought the drums up really loud in the mix. The guitars are kind of a little bit lower. It sounds very clean and polished. However, I think the original mix is much better, which we would get later on. And also due to contractual reasons, they could not put any images of the 2 albums that are represented here, which is Approaching Light Speed and Feel the Fire. So there's no images of those covers on here. And also they weren't allowed to put the songs in order. So these are all jumbled up between the 2 albums. And one song, Hearts, is completely deleted. But it's nice to have this. And at the time, I was very happy because it was the only appearance of Barnabas on CD at that point. So we had to wait a little longer to get some official releases out. So that happens when we saw in 2000 M8 Distribution reissuing in conjunction with ChristianDiscs.com. If you remember, ChristianDiscs.com was a mail order company. I remember ordering a lot of stuff from them at the time, and I think they may have had a storefront from where they were, but they're no longer in business. But they, in conjunction with M8 Distribution, which of course is Matt Hunt from Retroactive Records and Boone's Overstock, released this limited edition version of Approaching Light Speed. And what's great about this is it has All Alone on here, which was recorded during the Approaching Light Speed sessions, but not used. It was replaced by the song Crucifixion. So, like I said, All Alone would show up in a re-recorded version, not the same as here, on Little Foxes. So this was the reissue. So this was 2000, so that was 8 years later. We finally got this great album on CD for the first time. And then also, like I kind of mentioned before, in 2000, M8 Distribution put the first 2 albums, Hear the Light and Find Your Heart a Home, also on CD. And that included the B-side of Nicodemus from that 45 RPM record, because that had not shown up on any of the other Barnabas albums, only there. And that's actually a really good song. I'm surprised the band did not bring it onto. I think it's better than the song Directory Assistance, which was the A-side. But it did show up on that CD compilation in 2000. And then in 2000, well, before we get to that, in 2004, Retroactive Records put out the Feel the Fire and Little Foxes as a 2-on-1. So all the songs are on here, nothing's cut. But we finally got those 2 albums on CD for the first time through Retroactive Records. And what I was making mention of, and in 2000, that was 2004, this was released, Barnabas's Artifacts and Relics. And this is kind of a for die-hard fans only to have this. It's interesting. It has a couple songs in here by the Bethlehem White Sox, which was an earlier musical project of Monty Cooley, the original band founder. And then there's 3 songs on here from that Value of Life that I just showed you. 3 tracks of the 5 that Nancy sings in there, including All Alone, which was on there. And then it ends with 3 tracks that were captured on a battered AM/FM cassette recorder that was set up behind the drum kit during rehearsals, it says, for an upcoming New Year's Eve concert in Minneapolis in 1982. So they're interesting to have because they give a peering into the band rehearsing, and there's some banter between the band members on it. And so it's interesting to have. So if you're a really super big fan of Barnabas, it's good to have. I think there's still copies of this available at Boone's Overstock if you're really interested in that. But again, it's for diehard fans only. This is not going to be included in my ranking of the albums. I'm just doing the 5 studio albums proper when we get into that, which we're ready to do. All right, so that's just a little brief history of Barnabas. And now I'm going to give you how I rank these albums. So coming in at number 5 is Hear the Light, the band's debut album from 1980. And this album, it shows the band trudging through a batch of songs in the hard rock musical vein. There's nothing that's particularly memorable on any of the songs on here. Nothing that really sticks out. However, the band proved they are capable musicians, especially Gary Mann's anchoring bass riffs. So I'd like to say something about Gary Mann. He is a fantastic bass player. So when we're thinking about Christian bass guitar players, the name of Gary Mann probably doesn't come up very often, but he is really good. He's a really good bass player, and you see him all over the Barnabas albums with some great bass riffs. Really excellent bass guitars. Tracks like Savior, Directory Assistance, which was from that first 45 RPM single, and Little Faith, they have their charm, but they don't hint at what great heights the band would traverse towards being the metal masters they later became. The production made the album sound like a well-rehearsed garage band. A lot of that was improved when Rob Caldwell did a remaster of these, and these were reissued again in 2017. So this is the 2017 reissue with Rob Caldwell's remastering. So it greatly enhances the sound of these albums, so you can appreciate more of them. But like I said, not a particularly memorable album, but coming in at number 5 for me. Coming in at number 4 is their second album, Find Your Heart a Home. And again, this is the 2017 remastered version by Rob Caldwell on here. And Monte Cooley, like I had said earlier, was gone at this point, so the songwriting is taken over by Mick Donner and Chris Klingsmith. And it's an overall improvement of the band. Songs like The Conflict of Desire and Southern Woman, they show the band stretching out with more melody. And the closing song, Star, kind of veers into almost like a progressive rock, arena there, that they would kind of develop a little bit more on some of those tracks that showed up on their classic 2 albums that we'll talk about next. But Star is like probably the best song on here. But the album just shows them that, they're not really, they're getting better, but it's still not that memorable. In fact, there's a song in here called Boogie Time. It shows the band, if there was ever a confusion in what direction they should go in, the song Boogie Time in here is kind of like they're trying to put in a disco type flavor to the song, and probably, in my opinion, probably the worst song the band ever recorded, Boogie Time, and that's on here. Again, a better album than the debut, but still nothing that strikingly memorable on here. So that comes in at number 4. Okay, coming in at number 3 is the band's final studio album, Little Foxes, from 1986. And again, this is the 2017 remaster by Rob Caldwell. And this has its moments. It does show a band kind of not completely inspired, maybe in some respects sounding a little bit like they're going through the motions. It does contain some standout tracks on here, such as Destroy After Use, Little Foxes, The Haunting Auschwitz 87, and the re-recorded All Alone. They're all really good tracks on there. The other tracks are well-played metal, but not necessarily anything earth-shattering, especially after the two previous classic albums that came before it. And Sweet for the Souls of Our Enemies Part 2, Lover, doesn't hide the fact that the song could have more bite in it had they decided not to put a sax in there. So instead of having some nice gritty guitar riff solos and stuff in there, we get a sax. Well played, no doubt, but just kind of not, a pale sequel to part one that appeared on the earlier album before it. So it's not a super fantastic album. It does have its charm, but again, I think, like I said, they recorded for contractual reasons to get it out, and so the band was not maybe having their whole heart and soul into it. But that comes in at number 3 for me. All right, now we're down to the top 2. All right, and so my number 2 could be someone's number 1. Maybe in my choices are yours as well. But for me, coming in at number 2 is 1983's Approaching Light Speed. So many I know would have this in their number 1 spot, and that's totally understandable. But I'll explain in a little minute why it didn't make my number 1 spot for me. To say that the band made a major leap with this third studio album would be one of the huge understatements in music history, or at least Christian music history. They settled on moving away from that hard rock and boogie sound that they had on their first 2 albums, and they went full on into heavy metal, and that was the best decision they ever could have made. This album is a barn burner from start to finish. There are so many classic metal tracks on this album, from the killer Storm Clouds to the brooding Subterfuge and the anthemic opening track No Freedom. And when the band slows down for the ballad If Love Brings Love, they do so with passion and a lilting melody, and lifts the songs into being a classic for me. I think probably of the ballads of Barnabas that they've done in their albums, that's my favorite one, If Love Brings Love. I remember hearing that, and just is very passionate. And Nancy Jo Mann here with her vocals, her voice may have sounded a little bit harsh, and maybe not as good on those first 2 albums, but that's because I think she's meant to sing metal music here. Not that she's not a good vocalist outside of metal, but I think she really shines as a heavy metal vocalist. She has that grit, kind of like Resurrection Band's Wendy Kaiser here. And so this was definitely a good move for them to move into metal music. And there's nothing not to like on this classic album. Every song is a keeper on here. And like I said, I can understand people making this number 1 on their list. I'm sure a lot of people do, but it comes in number 2 for me. So of course, number 1, no surprises, Feel the Fire. For me, this album is the pinnacle of the band's powers as a metal force. They are taking all the best elements of the previous album, and they craft that incredible 3-song epic that opens this album: Prelude, The Dream, and Breathless Wonderment. And Breathless Wonderment, one of the greatest heavy metal Christian songs ever, in my opinion. And I think those 3 songs are so incredible that they are better than anything that's on Approaching Light Speed for me. As great as those songs are in there, those 3, I think, are the pinnacle of their powers here. And there is other songs on here, like someone might say a song like Hearts is kind of a throwaway. It's a ballad, but and of course it was cut from the Gospel According to Barnabas, but it's a good song. I like it. It's kind of like after the intensity of those opening 3 songs, you get that kind of break in between before they go back into the heavy onslaught of metal, which opens up the second side, if you're looking at it on the album side, which is Feel the Fire. And then I think the rest of these songs are just as strong. You have the almost like progressive metal of Northern Lights, which has kind of like an odd time signature with Nancy Joe Mann singing with the music, and I think it's intentional and it goes with it. And I absolutely love that song. And then there's the declaratory "Follow You Up," and what else? "Sweet for the Souls of Our Enemies," Part 1, "Hammer and Sickle," which again brings the band into this progressive metal venue, and just again, not a bad song on this album. And I would even say that "Sweet for the Souls of Our Enemies" almost finds the band moving into almost like Rush type epics. The band Rush, that kind of epics that Rush did is kind of represented here with "Sweet for the Soul of Our Enemies." And again, listen closely to Gary Mann's bass on there. I mean, really fantastic on here. And for me, this is one of the greatest Christian metal albums ever recorded. So this firmly comes in at number 1 for me. I love, of course, this and Approaching Light Speed, but for me, this one is the pinnacle of the band. And like I said, it's because of those 2 albums being so incredible. Little Foxes, it was really kind of a step down from that, even though it is an enjoyable listen. And if you are a Barnabas fan, you need to have the Little Foxes album on there, and there's definitely some really good songs on there as well. So it's too bad that the band couldn't sustain a longer career in Christian metal music, but they did release some incredible songs that should be given a greater spotlight in the history of Christian metal music. I really think that sometimes that Barnabas is forgotten when we think about those early heavy metal bands. We don't always bring up Barnabas, and I think we should. And I think those 2 albums alone, Approaching Light Speed and Field of Fire, are definites in any list of definitive Christian heavy metal albums. Those 2 albums should be included in the list. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I would love to hear how you would rank these albums. And if you haven't heard Barnabas in a while, go out and get them out of your collection and listen to them. And if you don't have them and you want to discover this band, you can obviously go online and give it a listen to before you purchase it. But all 5 of those albums, 2017, remastered by Rob Colwell, available at Boone's Overstock. So it's a perfect time to get them. If you've been sitting on the fence and haven't gotten them, you can get the whole set of all 5 of them. Again, Barnabas, great heavy metal band that should not be forgotten. So I hope you enjoyed that. And as always, I would like to encourage you to follow the light that shines out of the darkness. God bless everyone.